Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, June 20th, 2022, this is the regular board meeting of the Board of the Park District Commissioners of the Lake Bluff Park District. It is now 6:30, and if I can have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Here.
Commissioner Lane. Here. Commissioner Raymore. Here. Commissioner Reader. Commissioner Welsh. Here. Commissioner Weber.
Here.
President Wheeler.
Here. Before we go into the approval of the agenda for tonight, I would like to just call out that today is a federal and state holiday. It's Juneteenth. I hope you have all taken a moment to appropriately recognize today. As I was saying, the research that I did, very limited, was what connection does a park district have with Juneteenth? Opal Lee is the grandmother of Juneteenth. She took on a walking campaign from Texas to DC to bring this to become a national holiday. So if you do have the opportunity to walk, to think a little bit, I hope you take a moment as well to honor what today is about. The Park District is also recognized today and offered today as a floating holiday for staff. So thank you all for doing that. Okay, I'd like to move into the approval for the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane. Yes. Commissioner Raymore. Yes. Commissioner Welsh. Yes. Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Wheeler.
Yes. This is the time on our agenda that we'd like to take the statement of visitors. We do have a number of people here present at the meeting. Jeff Spillman is administrating everybody who may be online. I'll state again, as we did before, we're doing the best we can with technology. I will try to project as much as possible. We do have microphones here. I'll encourage all the commissioners to project as well. If anyone would like to speak, please stand up to the podium and use the microphone. Just for the statement of visitors that we have at this portion of our agenda, this is for citizens to address the board regarding items that are not included under unfinished or continuing business. There's a 3-minute limit per citizen. After 30 minutes of statements from the floor, I will close the statement of visitors for this evening. If there's anyone who would like to speak tonight.
Very well. So Lake Bluff residents since 1994. And so this has to do with a lot of things on the agenda. This has to do with our wetlands mitigation project. So first off, I want to let you know that I support all of you, every one of the commissioners. And so looking back in 2018, when we were in big trouble with the golf course and the park district before you all, and then, well, the park district before you all had made the decision to go with Golf Visions, which ended up being a great decision. And so with your assistance as well, has really done a great job with these finances and has moved us into, well, slowly out and out of the debt and into the black. And it seems like this is a really good trend that you are all on. So thank you. And my hope is that from here on out, the board takes the task force findings, so this is a summary, of course, that when that's final, and you all then begin to fill in the financial risks and the legal risks, the holes, because the task force has admitted that there are plenty. And with your good due diligence, continue to do the research. And then as one group, one committed board to make a decision in the best interest of this town, as we have elected you to do. And you are all volunteers. You're doing a tremendous job, really, you are. So I think about calling for a town referendum, and it seems to me that it is way premature on that, and that it's almost irresponsible. So instead, how about we all get out of your way and allow you to continue the research of what you are meant to be doing on behalf of this town. I fully support you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak?
Hi, everyone. My name is Bonnie Shaw. I am a Lake Bluff resident of just a couple years, but I've also lived in Lake Forest prior to moving to Lake Bluff 4 years ago, approximately 4 years ago. Myself and my husband, John wrote a letter to all of the park board members in support of the golf course. He's out golfing at the moment. So he asked that I come to represent not only himself, but myself, our 3 children. So in support of the golf course, you know, as I've looked at the recreational opportunities, right? Because you're all elected to be stewards of our recreational opportunities in our parks here in Lake Bluff. To me, the golf course seems kind of unique, right? You know, where else do you spend 4 hours playing golf with someone you don't even know? I played the first time ever at Friday Fun League this past Friday. I met an 85-year-old woman who started golfing there a year and a half ago in this women's league and loves it. She loves it. She's like, these ladies are so nice. We get together, we have lunch. And when I think about the balance of passive recreational opportunities like our preserves, the Ravine Park that I live very close to here in Lake Bluff, versus a golf course, I feel like as stewards of our recreational opportunities, I hope you'll find the right balance. I recently retired. I try to play the course at least twice a week. A number of my friends who I've met and my neighbors here in Lake Bluff also on the cusp of retirement and hope to be playing golf real soon. However, there's another viewpoint I'd like to bring to your thoughts and to the record, if you will, of tonight's meeting. I said to someone who I do yoga with, I mentioned about this possibility of the golf course being converted. And she said, oh my gosh, my sons have played that course from the time they were like 10 until they graduated high school. And one of them wrote a statement that I'm going to read for you. His name is Brian Roper. He is 25 years old. Lake Bluff Golf Course is a great public course with fun holes and creative greens. Even after moving away from the area and going to college, it is still one of the first courses I look to play when I come home. But to my friends and me growing up, it represented much more. For a good portion of my childhood, summer vacation meant hanging around the course with friends. Occasionally, we would bother to organize a group and a tea time, but most days, even that was not necessary. I always knew I would find friends and classmates there, where we would spend all day trying to beat each other on the course, outdrive one another on the range, and squeeze in one more chip and putt competition before the sunset. The course served as a central place we could all meet up, where we all gained a foundational passion for golf that many of us still have. But more importantly, it started friendships I still maintain 10 years later. I hope all future Lake Forest and Lake Bluff generations get the same opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lynn Roosman, and I live on Blodgett Avenue in Lake Bluff. And with genuine respect for each of you, I suppose today, in very brief statement, I'd like to speak to process rather than content of the SMC proposal. And meaning that, I ask that you, as a board, that you represent fair treatment of your constituents, as well as upholding due process. And when I say that, what I mean is I'm asking you to please ensure that the SMC proposal is put to our community as well as the greater district for a vote. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Stephanie Martin, and I've lived in Lake Bluff since 94, excuse me. As I engaged in my morning coffee ritual, which involves pushing a button on the coffee maker and flipping our day-by-day calendar on our windowsill, I noticed that for today's date, it had a quote by one of my favorite authors, Richard Powers. This particular quote is from his Pulitzer Prize-winning novel, The Overstory, and it reads, quote, "The best arguments in the world won't change a person's mind. The only thing that can do that is a good story," end quote. So I'm going to tell you a story. Don't worry, I'm well aware of my 3-minute time limit. I continue with my morning routine by going on my porch to enjoy my coffee and to pray, when suddenly the sweetest smell hit me. You see, we live on East Sheridan Place, right across the street from where East School used to stand, and where an empty field of clover is currently in full bloom. It smells amazing. If you think I'm kidding, go check it out for yourself tomorrow morning. For over 10 years now, we've enjoyed living across the street from this empty field. If you had told me that I would be enjoying the empty field filled with clover 15 years ago, I would not have believed a word you said. Allow me to explain. The school district was in a tight spot due to aging infrastructure, much as the Lake Bluff Park District is bound to be in the next few years. Committees were formed, task forces researched, letters to the editor were written, and lawn signs went up all over town. My neighbors on the perimeter of East School obviously had concerns about not only the demolition, but also what would replace the structure. We all had no signs in our front yards, while some of my very best friends had yes signs in their yards. My husband and I and many of our neighbors attended meeting after meeting after meeting. We asked all the hard questions, but most of all, we wanted to know what would replace the actual structure. No one could give us a specific answer. I truly believe that if the school board had told us at the time we would enjoy an open field, many of us would have switched our no signs to support the building of the new school. I didn't want to admit it then, but change is difficult. I had 3 young kids at the time who spent hours on the East School playground, which was removed shortly after the referendum passed. But guess what? We didn't have to go far to the Artesian Park playground. For those of you who were here for the last school district referendum, you know how it passed by only a few votes, but it was enough to pass. I had to admit defeat. The tribe of Lake Bluff had spoken with their votes. I'm sure many of you listening tonight are saying to yourselves, and perhaps to each other, this is nothing like the last school board referendum. And you'd be correct. But there are really only 2 main differences between the school board referendum and the golf course. The first is that the task force people are giving you many of the details involved, unlike the school board back in 2007. The second main difference is that the future of the golf course is in the hands of the Park District Board. 7 commissioners. All we ask is that the decision be on the ballot in November. Thank you for your time and your service.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm John Minorini, 27-year Lake Bluff resident. And I love the golf course and I love playing golf. And first of all, thanks for all the work you do with the continued Park District work and all the extra time you've been spending covering this issue of water management. I've been a member at the Lake Bluff Golf Club for the last 22 years. I was first introduced to the Lake Bluff Golf Club back in the 70s when I played golf for the Highland Park High School golf team, and Lake Forest hosted the conference championship here at Lake Bluff Golf Club. Lake Bluff and Lake Forest hosted the conference tournament for years. The Lake Forest High School team still plays there. The Lake Forest College team also plays there. There are groups of children from the elementary school that went there after school for golf lessons. Also, there's children from the junior high that went there after school for golf lessons. Lake Bluff Golf Course hosts tournaments such as the IJGA, the Illinois Junior Golf Association. And today they hosted a state amateur qualifier. This is not an outdated golf course. This is a very active golf course, as you all know. there are some 36,000 rounds of golf played at Lake Bluff every year. That's 36,000 visits to that golf course, which doesn't include the people that are there chipping or practicing putting or just visiting to get some food. You know, of those 36,000 rounds, you know, thousands of those rounds are from people that outside of this town that come to our town and use our golf course. And there's a good chance that after they finish playing golf, they're out at the local brewery or restaurants or retailers. What a wonderful asset to have for a park district. A recreational park that creates a flurry of activity all summer long. And what great benefits to our town as well. I show up at the Lake Bluff Golf Course to play golf 2 to 3 times a week. This year I've been observing how active the golf course is, while also checking out the activity of the Skokie River Preserve, which is right across the street from the golf course. I've been noticing how the parking lot of the golf course, which accommodates parking for hundreds of cars, seems to be jam-packed. And, you know, people are coming and going from 6 a.m. till dusk over at the golf course. I make it a point to take a look over at the Skokie River Preserve parking lot, which holds about 10 spaces for cars. And I can honestly tell you, I've never seen more than 2 cars in that parking lot. This town does not need another preserve. If I'm a board member, I'm going to be extremely biased to this golf course, which provides our town a necessary recreational option. This golf course is a gem and should be left alone. You have my full support to vote this water storage proposal off the table. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm JJ Parker. Thank you all for your work. I grew up in Lake Bluff, and I recently moved back last year with my wife and 2 children. I'm here today to hear the issues at hand. I spent many years playing on the golf course. However, I moved to Lake Bluff because I think it's the best place in the world to raise a family. That's what a Lake Bluff resident told to me, and that decided that comment was what shifted me to uproot my family and move back here. I think about my children and what would be best for them in the years at hand. And I have strong interest in what a forest preserve could do for my family to be able to use that area. And even though the golf course was super beneficial for me, I think an individual family is going to know what's best for their family. And so I ask you to think about a referendum for our community so we can think about what's best for ourselves and what's best for our children. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Andrew Hunt. I'm a 22-year resident of Lake Bluff. My comments will be fairly short and really related to process. It is my understanding that there is going to be a referendum one way or the other in terms of raising the tax levy on Lake Bluff citizens. I'm very hopeful that the board could clarify whether that is in fact the case. If it is, I don't think it would be responsible to not consider this proposal as a way to mitigate those costs and let the Lake Bluff residents decide whether or not that's an issue that they feel strongly about. I'm not making any comments pro or against the golf course, or for that matter, the SMC proposal. I just would like clarification from the board as to whether or not there's going to be a referendum one way or the other to increase the tax levy on Lake Bluff citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Susan Ryder. I'm at 456 Sunrise Avenue. To the previous speaker's point, I refer you to the minutes from the meeting of September 27th, 2021, a few 8 or 9 months ago, where the board decided to approve a proposal from beyond your base for the purpose of considering a referendum to pay for, as they proposed, the needed improvements to the beach. Right here,
9 months ago, or perhaps on Zoom 9 months ago, you guys approved that. So for us to simply wish for the status quo to stay, wish for this beautiful 150 acres to remain the way it is very short-sighted. In fact, the decision was made that November was the best time for referendum. So I ask you, I beg you to let these constituents make a decision in November by considering the SMC proposal as you must.
I wasn't prepared to say anything, but I couldn't sit here without walking out and not saying something. Jack Meyerhoff. I've lived in Lake Bluff for almost 43 years. In fact, I served on the park board back in the late 90s and until about 2010. I was president for about 8 years. And I can tell you during many meetings, we talked about the golf course always, and it always seemed to be the golfers versus the non-golfers. And we had data, we had statistics, we had people from this community, we had people from other communities, and we argued and argued and argued. And at that time, behind closed doors, really wasn't closed doors, or public meetings, we were actually thinking about making it a 9-hole course, and that was 25 years ago. And I was totally against that because I am an avid golfer, and my whole family have been avid golfers, although I don't play the golf course very much anymore. I think the board has a lot of data regarding the lease with Golf Visions on who's responsible for X and Y. And I think all those leases are different because we had proposals at that time made to us and we didn't like Pepper Sports. We didn't like leasing. And you arrived at Golf Visions, I don't know what it says. So there's responsibilities which are financial and non-financial in that lease. We don't know that, you do. Also, the amount of people that really play from out of the community and play at this golf course versus not, you have all that data. We do not. I've seen a bunch of signs and emails from friends that how much the golf course loses, makes, et cetera, et cetera. It makes no sense because with a couple of good CPAs grinding into numbers, we never got to a pure number on how much the course lost every year because we allocated other costs in there. We took costs out of there from other parts of the park board. So whatever you do, I give you all my support. And after this meeting, I will just listen. And eventually, if there's a referendum, I will vote. My background in business was finance, banking, and what this costs the taxpayers is pretty important to myself as a retiree. On the other hand, what it's going to cost you to continue to maintain the golf course under the financial arrangements of that lease, which I don't know, is also going to be a tax increase possibly at some time, because that money's got to come from someplace. I don't know who's responsible for it. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello. So I'm Andrew Henkel. I live on Hancock Avenue in Lake Bluff. I moved to Blodgett, so I'll be surrounded by a lot of pro-preserve folks, but hopefully they'll welcome me. I grew up in Lake Forest. I've lived in LB since 2010, and I played on the high school golf team. I run a men's golf league now with about 70 people, and I coordinate about 500 rounds a year with Golf Visions, which they have been wonderful to work with, and they've made some drastic improvements this year. Sean over there has done a great job. The course has been a wonderful way to develop relationships, and I owe a lot of my friendships to the course. And I guess my main point here is our taxes has been presented as one of the main talking points of why we should go the preserve route. And I've read the task force report as much as I can. I've been more than a casual observer, but far less than what you have done and what the task force has done. To me, it seems like the golf course is about break even. It seems to me like the preserve, the golf course isn't the reason why our taxes are high, and the preserve isn't our magic solution to our long-term tax obligations. So my understanding, and I'm hoping the board can hopefully respond at the appropriate time. Are we the first park board or park district that would do this? I have not, from everyone I've asked and talked to, it seems like we're the guinea pig here from
park district perspective, but I don't know if that's true. I don't want to tell people that constantly if it's not true. And then also, as far as legal issues, is there any update on whether or not we could legally sell these credits after using government funds to build the wetlands? And I think you guys know what I'm referring to there. So anyway, thank you for all of your work. And I'd love this to not go to referendum simply because I think the result's going to be the same, but I'd hate for 5 months of dueling yard signs and more flyers. I just don't know if the town could put up with 5 months of that. It's very impressive. So we trust you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Deb Fisher, and I first want to thank you for your ongoing service to the community. Please know I trust you to make the decisions that are in the best interest of the community. I voted for you to do exactly that. I also trust the process that you put in place regarding the SMC proposal. You named an exemplary task force, and they've embraced the charge that you gave them. The deep dive that they've taken into the material is frankly extraordinary, and I eagerly await the finished report. In my mind, you commissioners and the task force are the experts in this matter at this time. I'm not looking, frankly, to turn it over to the community to decide what is best when few have made the concentrated effort to learn and understand the big stuff and the minutia, both of which is important in a matter this complex. When I face a complex challenge, I want the specialist, not the well-meaning generalist involved. If I need medical advice, I want advice from specialists, not from friends and neighbors who have ideas, but who lack depth and experience. I prefer that you, who've done the heavy lifting and the deep dive, make the decision on behalf of the community. I feel that it would be, frankly, a step backward to ask the community to chime in at this point on this complex an issue. In the real world, we elect officials, president, Congress, senators to make the complex decisions. The community doesn't participate in every vote. I view that the same way here. I trust you to make the decision on the stormwater management proposal. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Barb Fox. I've only been a resident of Lake Bluff for 7 years. My husband and I moved here from Glenview. Really, the reason I came here tonight is because I really wanted to thank you profusely for assigning that task force, getting that up and running. You know, I was hearing tidbits here on pro golf course, pro wetlands, SMC, et cetera. And so I started looking online and to try to get some accurate information off Facebook business going back and forth was so maddening that I almost jumped into the madness. But then I thought, nope, I just need to find out. I thought all I want is the facts. And I have watched the meetings, the task force meetings and reports to you and whatnot that I haven't watched online. I have read the reports. And it's so impressive. And I really feel like they did a very thorough job of outlining what this is going to look like, this if we go this way or if we go that way, you know, keep the course or not. And so I, unlike the most recent speaker, I'm on the other side of that. I think it's extremely important to put that task force factual information out there to the community and let the residents decide based on facts, not on hearsay, not on I want this and you can, that's not true and et cetera. I guess my hope is that you will put that information out there that this will come to a community vote, but there's no sense in it going out to the community for a vote unless all that information is properly diffused out there so that everybody has it. Nobody's saying, what are you talking about? Or that's not what I heard. So that the facts stand for themselves and the residents can decide for themselves. That's it. And thank you again for your service to all of us. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Eric Joslin. I am not an 800-year member of this community. I am, however, a 12-year member of this community. I also own the Lake Bluff Pub and Cycle and Bonk Sandwich Shop. My husband owns the buildings, a lot of the buildings downtown. And previously, his parents owned what is now in Avosi. It used to be called Osterline Clothing. I love what it was. I love more what it is. So when I think about the subject at hand, I think about what I've heard, right? The pros and the cons. I'm not anti-golf. Golf is a beautiful thing. I am pro-community golf. I personally have spent a lot of time and energy investigating the subject at hand and continue to do so. I do love the idea of the preserve. And I do not necessarily believe that golf is the best thing for our community, not just for today, but for the future. So I guess what I am asking is that as we have trusted in you, in the Park District, to do make a lot of decisions, this is a really big decision about our future, not just financially. I brought this up before. Cristo Del Real High School is using their preserve, recently built with Stormwater Commission, as their biology course. It is their new classroom for biology students. That's just one example of the possibilities of what this could bring for us. So I guess what I ask is, let's not let fear get in the way of a decision that's best not for now, but for the future. Let's look at the possibilities. Yes, let's look at the data and the facts and all the rest. And to the prior point, let's go ahead and get that out to the community. We're all smart people. Like, we don't live in Lake Bluff because we didn't work hard to get here or to stay here. I think that what I ask is that this board has to trust in us as your community members to also do our homework and to make the right vote for the community for today and for the future.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Carney, and we've been residents for 20-something years. And I appreciate your time. It's got to be hard sitting here listening to everybody go on and on about this divisive issue. But one thing that hasn't been mentioned is the environmental issues that are facing our world, and that bird populations are down. We have pollinator crisis, and I really feel I do not mean to speak against the golfers, but I do think there are other alternatives, courses for them to play. But I do think that this could be really a good thing for our community and for the larger community of nature if we had a wetlands here, and it would filter the water going into the lake. And we do have a crisis with the lake water, with all the nitrates and everything flowing into the lake and causing problems there. It'd be a lot less chemicals, and it would serve as a filtration system. So, I mean, that's just a different perspective that you hadn't heard yet tonight, but I would like to put that out there. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else? We're getting very close to our 30 minutes. Are we at?
There's three with their hand raised right
There are
now.
3 of their hand raised.
Or otherwise it's 30 minutes.
Okay. No, you said there are 4 at this point? Okay. It's okay with the board to go ahead with the last 4 people? Okay. Jeff, if you can go ahead and do that and administrate the last 4 people to come on.
First one is Constance McCabe.
Hi, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I apologize. I'm up in Door County sitting by the side of a road to get a good internet connection. To an earlier speaker's point, I would like to mention that on June 4th, Highland Park opened the Highland Park Preserve which was a golf course conversion as well, working with stormwater management. My husband and I and several friends went over there midweek, 3 days after it opened. And we all remarked on how well used that preserve was, even in its opening week in the middle of the week. There were families that were cycling together. Other families were picnicking together. Other families were walking the trails of the preserve, reading the educational signs. There's a great active possibility, not passive possibility at all, to the presentation of the preserve. I would like to ask the park board to, despite the number of open meetings for conversation, and we thank you for having all of those, but you'll never truly know the wishes of the community unless this goes to a referendum. So I would like to strongly urge you to get feedback from as many Lake Bluff citizens as possible by opening the question to a referendum and allowing residents to look to the future, not just nostalgia for a past golf course. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Luciana.
Thank you.
Hi there. I want to thank you for your service as well. And I echo Constance's wishes to have this issue of the golf course conversion into a preserve to be put up for a vote. Let the tax base provide their opinions on a formal vote on a referendum. This is too big of a decision to be made by few individuals. There are millions of dollars on the line. And also echoing a former speaker, there are so many environmental issues facing our world today. We need to take advantage of every single opportunity that we have to provide more natural environments for pollinators, for bird populations, and for more biodiversity. I am not against golf, but I do understand that golf courses are extremely water intensive. They use an extreme amount of fertilizers that all end up in groundwater or in our surface, in our rivers, in our lakes. So I ask you to please continue your research. It's been amazing what the task force has been done. And I understand if you need to do more research, but when it's time to make a decision, please share the information transparently with all the citizens of Lake Bluff and let the citizens make a decision via vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tanya.
Hi, my comments will be quick because the last three comments were right in line with what I want to say about the environmental issues. I'm very, it is clearly a good, better environmental issue, a topic than what the golf course is. So thank you for those comments. But I haven't heard about taxes, and we know that there's taxes coming for the beach and the pool. And maybe you all can be transparent about that. But I, for one, love the beach and the pool. And this is a solution for that. And I don't understand how that is not being either communicated properly or understood with the citizens. And that is why I will also echo the right for a vote when we understand it, because I will be hard pressed to vote for a tax referendum for the beach or pool if we turn this down. And I think that will also be the case with other Lake Bluff, Millwood residents. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker, Jeff?
Gail Gamreth.
Thank you.
Hi, you've heard from me before. I just want to reiterate, I'm not sure why all the golfers don't want the town to decide on this. If so many people love golf, as they're saying, and I believe it, it's a great asset for our community. But if you don't bring this to a town vote, when you go to ask us to raise our taxes, which you have to bring to a town vote, many people will be upset. How do you ask people for their money if you don't ask people about as big a decision as this that might provide money to save the beach? The beach is Lake Bluff's best asset. That's why we're one of the best coastal towns. People move here for the beach. every town USA has a golf course, but not every town has a beach. We need to put money towards it. That's why you need to bring this to a town vote, please, so that we're not in an uproar. I will take my lawn sign down as soon as I know we're going for a vote, and I will put it up with just a few weeks in front of that vote in October. I promise. I don't want it up for 5 months either, but please be fair and let the town vote. We are a town of smart people that can learn and be educated, and to put them down and say that they won't know the facts, that's an insult on the people of Lake Bluff and Knollwood. Thank you.
Thank you. This time I'd like to close the statement of visitors and move on to our board agenda. Next up for this evening, we have the consent agenda, which includes the approval of minutes from May 23rd, 2022 from our regular board meeting, the approval of minutes from June 13th, 2022 from our special board meeting, the approval of the invoice schedule for ACH payments dated May 19th through June 9th, 2022, and the approval of the invoice schedule for the period of May 19th through June 9th of 2022, as well as the purchase card ratifications. Are there any questions from the board or comments about anything that's going to be in the consent agenda?
Yes, no, Jennifer,
Okay.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I need a correction.
Okay.
Page 11.
Of which?
Page 11 in our packet. Under Facilities and Programs Committee, Commissioner Lane, blah, 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 possible new software and phone application for the pool should read for the reps for the whole park district.
Just a second. This is page 11, you said. Which minutes are those?
May 23rd, 2022. Page 11, it just says the new software and phone application were for the pool, but it's for the whole park district that we're looking into. Thank you.
That's something as well.
yes, on the part of the vote on committees.
Which agenda, which minute those we get? 13.
Regarding on page 14,
Okay.
for the Finance Administration and Future Planning Committee, it lists you as a member instead of me.
You are correct, and then correction should be made. And anyone else with any other changes, Sue?
Yeah, on the approval of the minutes for June 13th, and this is on page 18 of our packet today. I believe we were talking about public comment at the board meeting. We mentioned public comment for each agenda item, and the discussion was that the best time to have that discussion was after the board discussed it, but before the motion was set. So I think we just want to clarify that, and that will follow through the policy. And then there was one little minor correction I sent to you, John. Yeah.
Yeah, that was just a header at the top of the page.
Just a header at the top of the page.
I got that.
Yep.
That was just changing. It said regular board meeting and it was, should have said special board meeting of June 13th. So we can make that correction.
Is there anything else?
Not related to the minutes, but a couple of questions about the purchase cards and all that good stuff. Page 22. What are we spending $3,300 on for 4th of July parade giveaways? Yeah.
Yeah, that was we budgeted for 4th of July giveaways. You said it was on page 23.
Yeah. All right, middle.
Oh, I see it. Yeah, that's actually under budget. We budgeted for $3,500.
All right, stop by my house when you're giving away some. And then, oh, nice. Page 26 at the bottom for alarm monitoring. It's kind of a lot of small like $200 type items. Then we have like one for $1,600. Is that Is that monthly or quarterly or annual? Why is that number so big? I don't know if I've seen that one before. It's
It's about 4,000
$1655 spot 13. Which one's
Bill, you remember on the alarm monitoring, like the 1,600, was that is that a monthly or quarterly?
Those, there should be monthly, and that they're broken up by each building that has a different fire or smoke alarm. So the shelter, each have one kind of hot facility. This building is the biggest with all the doors and fobs.
Okay.
This is the largest account.
Gotcha. So that's related to this one. Yes. Okay. That's all I have.
Can I, was that color powder, for the powder that was $22,000, is that getting reimbursed then?
How much?
2,000?
That will be reimbursed.
Yeah, that was from the friends.
Okay.
We'll see another bill next month. That'll be for the t-shirts. But we'll get reimbursed.
With those changes to the minutes, can I have a motion please to approve the consent agenda? Second. A roll call, please. Who's second?
Commissioner Greenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane? Yeah. Commissioner Raymore? Yes. Commissioner Walsh? Yes. Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
President Fugel?
Yes. Next on our agenda is our report from our finance with our month-to-date and year-to-date financial report.
Hello, month-to-date revenue exceeds budget by $160,000. Part of that are property tax collections that are far surpassing what was budgeted, especially the personal property replacement tax, and then last year's taxes that are being collected now. In terms or in regards to month-to-date expenditures, which are under budget by $160,000, much of that still has to do with the gap in timing between staff turnover and when staff leave and when they're being hired. Of course, it's a very tight labor market and it takes time to find people to replace. I think we are close to being fully staffed again, but it has been somewhat of a challenge to get there. And that is all for the month.
So Wolf, much of that savings and expenses will continue to have.
Or in relation to personnel, that should equal out or plateau at a certain point when we're fully staffed. The expenses on a monthly basis will reach what was previously.
Right, on a monthly basis, but what we've not spent so far, we're not going to spend.
Yes.
Whereas the revenue, we will end up having less revenue in the future.
That will,
to make up for the higher taxes we receive now.
That depends on the EAV and the tax levy, but yes, all things being equal, we're not going to collect more money than is outstanding.
Can you just explain the variance in the capital and debt line? That was 27,000. And last I remember, we were like 15 under for the dresser of the pool. So just want to make sure.
I can't explain it off the top of my head right now, but I will get that to you.
Get some information.
Anything else? Just a quick commendation. After hearing a report this past week that Chicago pools can't even open because they don't get staff, they're offering bonuses to lifeguards in order to be able to staff appropriately. Thank you for everything that you have done to keep our pool open, our beach open, and keep the revenues where they are and keep this expenses where they are. This is really a good report, so thank you all. To the staff.
I'd like to take credit, but that is all.
I've asked for that, then so moved.
Aurora also did not open
Yeah.
one of their big pool facilities because they didn't have enough people.
Yeah, so that we're able to offer this to the Park District community is tremendous. Thank you, everybody, because I know it takes a great amount of holding your breath and a lot of interviewing and a lot of time spent in order to get where you are, getting everything ready. So thank you. We are now on
We have to
to,
vote to accept.
no, just a summary for tonight, or do we need to accept this? We do need to accept it. Okay, I have a motion, please, then, to accept the financial report as stated.
So moved.
Second. A roll call.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane? Yes. Commissioner Raymore? Yes. Commissioner Welch? Yes. Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
President Vina?
Yes. Now we're on to the new business with the 2021 audit. Yeah.
On file, name it.
Thank you. Good evening, Doc.
All right. Thank you for having me. I first would like to thank Wolf and the entire finance team for all their help in making this a successful audit. Without their help, this wouldn't be possible, so thank you. I'm going to first share my screen and we can go through the annual financial report together. And let's see if this works. Are you all able to see it?
Yes.
With the perfect. Okay. So the first item that I did want to point out to you is on page 7, which is the Certificate of Achievement Award. We did apply for and expect to receive the same award for fiscal year 2021. So congratulations on receiving this award. Scrolling about 3 or 4 more pages, you'll find our Lauterbach name and letterhead. This is our independent audit report in which we provide a clean, unmodified opinion over the Park District financials. This is the highest opinion you may receive, and it basically states that we found no issues with internal controls or the numbers as they're presented that would otherwise alter our opinion on the Park District. The management discussion and analysis will begin on page 14. And the management discussion analysis really provides a summary of how the year performed in narrative form. So if you have questions on fluctuations from year to year or what the numbers truly mean, this is where you'd want to go to find those answers. Your financial statements will begin on page 25 and 26. And it really starts with what's called the Statement and Deposition. This is essentially all of your funds put together in one spot in full accrual, which means that you're going to find your long-term assets, such as your capital assets, as well as your long-term liabilities, such as your general obligation bonds. These long-term items are only on the Statement of Net Position. They are not on your fund level statements. So that's kind of the difference between this Statement of Net Position and your fund financials. Your individual fund financial statements will begin on page 29 and 30. And on page 30, you'll see towards the bottom, your total fund balance for the Park District as a whole was at $2.4 million. About 24%, or $587,000, is related to your general fund, which is your main operating fund. To see how this fund performed in the current year, we can skip ahead to what would be your income statement, which is on page 33. Towards the middle of the page, you'll notice that the general fund had an operating revenue of $256,000. This is primarily due to your revenues coming in slightly higher than anticipated and your expenditures being below budget in the current year. This was further reduced by a transfer out of $184,000 to your debt service fund to cover principal and interest payments. So your general fund, which is your main operating fund, had a net increase of $71,000 in fiscal year 2021. So overall, it was a good year for the district. Your notes of financial statements will begin on page 36. And the notes really provide further detail into how we came up with the figures that we did with supporting schedules. Within there, you'll find your long-term debt and your capital asset schedules. I'm not going to go through the notes with you tonight, so I'll have you jump ahead all the way to page 71. Page 71 is the start of your budgetary information. So if you'd like to see how a specific fund performed based on what was budgeted, this is where you'd want to go. And as I mentioned, you can see that the budget for the revenues was at 1.9 million, and what actually came in was just over 2 million. So it was slightly higher than anticipated, while your expenditures were below budget in the current year, which contributed to that increase in the current year. Does anyone have any questions on the financial statements?
Don, I have a handful, but you want to run through everything first and then we'll circle back to them?
Yeah, I mean, the last piece that I was going to stop on was the management letter comments. We did provide a separate report that went through our comments. We did have 3 prior year recommendations, 2 of which were implemented in the current year. So those are going to go away in next year's audit. And we'll look into the remaining comment next year for implementation. We also provided a new current year recommendation, and that's in regards to GASB 87, which is a change in how leases are going to be reported. So it looked like you guys had some installment contracts. Those would fall into this. It's merely just a change in reporting for those. So we'll work with Wolf and the finance team for that implementation next year. So if any of you have any questions, we can go through them together.
Yeah, that'd be great. The finance committee met last week to do an initial review of this. I think we had a lot of our questions answered. I'm just trying to figure out exactly what page I want to reference here. Give me a moment.
Okay.
It was nice to be able to follow along without having to fumble through my own PDF here. So thank you for that.
Yep.
It's essentially it related to kind of the difference between I think here we go. So it's on everyone's on page 74 of your packets. And Don, for you, it's the reconciliation of the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances. In the executive summary, we mentioned how we have an increase, our net position of roughly $1.5 million. And then we look at, right above the page I referenced, if you look at the fund balances beginning and end, it looks like we have a decrease of roughly $240,000. The page I referenced shows that, net change in fund balances and then the changes in net position of governmental activities. So, I think from like a budgetary perspective, when we try to come up with our budget numbers on an annual basis, it's really that negative $241,000 that we end up looking at, and not necessarily the the change in the net position of government activities, the $1.56 million that is at the bottom of the page. I was hoping you could just kind of take a second and walk through this page itself, because I think it's really important for really everyone here to kind of understand it a little bit better.
Yeah, so let me make sure I'm looking at the same one that you are. Let me get to that page. let me make sure that you're thinking this, we're looking at the same page here. Is it on the bottom of page 35? Does it say?
I don't have page numbers on my audit.
Okay, all right, let me share my screen, make sure we're looking at the same one.
It's just before the notes to the financial statements. Yep, that's the one I'm referencing.
Yes. So this $241,000, this is referring to what your fund levels are. So that right here, you can see on the previous page, that's basically your fund levels. As I mentioned, the statement and net position is going to full accrual. So in government accounting, it's called modified accrual. So your government-wide financials are going to have those long-term assets and liabilities that I referenced. So your capital assets and your long-term debt, such as your general obligation bonds. So the difference between the 241 and the 1.5 million is primarily due to your retirement of debt, as well as your IMRF pension actually became an asset this year. So it's these long-term items that are really playing a bigger part of that $1.5 million that you can see on page, let me get to it here. It's on page 27. It looks like it's for your, called the statement of activities and your governmental. So the change in net position here of 1.5 million. The difference between the two is essentially all those changes in your long-term items is what it really boils down to. But for your purposes, what really matters on a budgetary purpose is essentially your fund levels. So that if you look at it as a whole, that $241,000 is primarily what you're more concerned about on a day-to-day operations.
Yeah, Don, thank you for clarifying that. I just as hopefully a quick follow-up to that. Do you have any insight as to why the the pension service changed so much year over year?
So I will say that I'm not an actuary. So when it comes to how they determine that total asset, I don't know the nitty gritty on exactly how they come up with those, but there is a footnote disclosure. Let me find it for you. Just bear with me. So on this page, you'll see where the IMRF, you'll see that the total beginning balance at 2020 was $524,000, which is actually an asset. And you'll notice that where it says the net investment income, it actually jumped $1.5 million. So that's primarily the biggest factor in how it went from $524,000 to $1.3 million, is simply because the market was incredibly good with the IMRF investments that are held in that retirement fund. So that's kind of the biggest factor that increased for your pension asset. And that also contributed to that $1.5 million increase in your statement of activities.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
Can I just point out one thing? So today is my day to be slighted. Early in the audit report, doesn't really make that much difference, I don't think. I am listed as my term ending in 2021.
Right. We did catch that.
I know many people would like. I'm still here.
Was not intentional, and the final thought.
I don't see you. I'm surprised I have a name for it.
Yeah.
Financial aspect of it. Is there anything you wanted to ask?
No, I just reiterate what Scott was looking at in terms of what number was meaningful on that page. Because if the actuary said we made $815,000 last year, I'm sure up to today, we lost at least this much, so.
Yeah, right. I mean, it all depends on the market. Is, you know, obviously it's going to fluctuate from year to year and month to month. That's the biggest factor. There are quite a few other factors that go into this calculation, such as, you know, the life expectancy, and there's a lot of other factors that go into it that I'm clearly not an actuary, so I can't really get into what exactly goes into those, but you're right, it's probably going to fluctuate from month to month and year to year. Any other questions?
No.
No.
All right. Well, thank you for your time and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Appreciate that.
Bye.
We got to accept it. Okay. So may I have a motion, please, then to accept our 2021 audit?
So moved.
Second.
And we'll call with obviously the change of Commissioner Greenfield's and can I have a roll call? Commissioner Greenfield?
Yes.
Commissioner Lane?
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore? Yes. Commissioner Welch? Yes. Commissioner Weber?
Yes.
President? Yes. Moving on to community engagement with the PCI proposed schedule. We spoke at the last meeting regarding PCI, and I'll just reiterate that we are working with PCI to engage the community, to bring forward information from the task force, to be able to have the public be able to have their voices heard regarding the proposal that's in front of us. PCI, and Vicki, again, I keep turning to you because we're the ones that have been working with John Beeler to talk to PCI. The importance of this is our roles as commissioners, as stewards, to educate the community, as we kept hearing tonight from the public, about the facts of what is before us. Anything else on that?
No, were we going to talk the schedule at all? Or?
Yeah, so what we did, and again, we received information today just regarding the proposed schedule so that everybody has an idea of what we're looking toward. Okay, but it's anticipated that the task force, for everybody who's keeping up, the FAQs, the preliminary report is really moving very quickly. The task force members have set very intense deadlines on themselves. I think they were pretty much the computers all day long in order to try to finish everything. So with that in mind, what we would like to do is have the presentation of the task force report to the board. And that would be June 30th. Thank you, June 30th. And then on July 11th, this would be offering a Q&A session with the task force. So this would be open to the public, and they would be able to have the task force here to ask questions, answer questions about their report. Thereafter, we would have two public forum meetings. One would be on July 18th, and the second would be on July 25th. July 25th right now is scheduled as a board meeting, but we would be able to have our board meeting that evening and then go from there into the public forum regarding the proposal.
Jennifer, real quick, are we stepping on toes of other, like or the village board or school board? I feel like a lot of things are on Mondays.
Good question. When we were talking.
Yeah, you know what, we actually jumped around. I said June 30th and that was in haste. July 11th is when they would present to us.
Correct.
July 18th is when they would present to residents, for residents to ask questions. And then July 25th at 6:30 would be the first of 2 public forums, because we wanted to do one in July and one in August, because a lot of people travel and we figure we can hit, some people some of the time and the rest of the people on the other time. The other would be August 9th at 6:30. And so one is on a Monday and one is on a Tuesday, because we were trying to.
August 9th,
Yeah.
the second one.
Yeah.
The 18th of July is the first.
No, the 25th of July is the
25th.
first. Yeah. The 18th is when it's just a Q&A with the task force and the public. So that's not, people can't really stand up and state their opinions at that one.
So 25th is just a board meeting.
No, 25th is, we have our board meeting that night, and then after will be when they can.
First public.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, no, sorry, it was my fault.
No, I'm looking at their dates.
And I think that was sent to everybody on Friday, but we can recirculate that so that make sure everybody has the dates. We did, Commissioner Weber, we did look at the village calendar, not just the regular meetings with PCCBA and some of the other meetings, as well as the school district, and tried to be, cognizant of those meetings. I think, the August 9th might be a committee, the whole meeting for the school district, but it's going to be difficult to miss everything, but we did take those into consideration when trying to set these up and doing multiple meetings to try to give residents a better chance to make one of them.
Yeah, different days of the week in case people have like a standing, thing on the night.
Thank you for
And
being
the
considerate.
public forum are just for residents to express their opinions.
Yes.
That's the 25th and the 9th.
Yeah, so those are listening, we're just listening to the residents.
Similar to what happened tonight, but they'll have the whole task force presentation, 2 weeks prior to the first one.
Where are we having these?
Gymnasium.
In the gymnasium? What's our seating capacity there? Okay. I think it's gonna be 100.
How many have you set up before? 150 chairs?
I think it says 262.
Okay, that gets 500 over the 2 times. That'll hit 500, allow 500 people if you go to one of the 2 of them.
Said we could be available on Zoom as well.
We're never going to be recording each one of them.
Yeah.
And the recordings of each one will be available on our website. And speaking of websites, again, there will be a public landing page from our Park District website, and that will contain the information from the task force report. It will give the ability for community members to submit questions onto that page, and also to give comment and feedback on that page.
And that's launched on June 30th, but it won't have, everything available on June 30th. Sure. June 30th.
So
This is my first time being involved in one of these public meetings. Do we have time limits on it, or do we just go until the comments run out?
There will be a more stringent timing for public comment, that there will be a 3-minute, and PCR will assist us in making sure that we have cards so that we keep people to a time limit that way. We really haven't talked about whether they suggested a start time, a possible end time, but we'll have to see how that goes. Any questions? Okay. So again, I'm very,
I have a question.
yes.
At what time will the board have to ask the task force questions?
That would be,
Will that be the 11th?
that will be on the 11th when the task force presents to us. I made a mistake in the dates. Nikki was correct.
The 11th is when the task force presents to us as a board, and that, people are still welcome to come to that as well. And then the 18th is when the task force will present, kind of do a public forum, it's a Q&A specifically for the public. So it'll be like kind of two of the same thing, one's to us, one's to the public.
Will the task force be giving a summary, or will it just be opening for questions and assuming that they'll be doing their own research?
When they make a presentation to us?
On
the 18th. We can talk more about the structure of that, because we did ask on the 2 public forums. There really, at that point, the task force information is out, the opportunity to ask questions is over there. It will really just be public forum. There's no need to do a presentation or summary or anything else. We can find out as to what the task force feels.
Okay. Yeah, that's what, when we talked about it, we thought that the information would have already been out there.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, because it relies on the public to do the reading. Not everyone gets their information by reading. They might get it by listening. So I just want to make sure that we're doing it fairly too.
Well, they'll already have the public forum where they can listen to, if they want to listen.
When the task force
makes.
Oh, when they present to us, so they just have to know.
To us and when they present to the public.
Oh, that's okay.
There's 3 meetings to the public.
Okay.
One is that where they present, the other 2 are where we gather.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's going to be an executive summary as well. So they really are refining how we do everything as much as possible to make it condensed as well as unabridged version. Short tabs and everything else. Very, very. Okay, on next to the policy manual update. Hopefully there is, everyone received the policy manual and you can see the red line changes. With this.
We were blue, right?
They were blue.
Just making sure.
No, they were red. I saw red.
So pull up, and I don't need to back to the president, because it's yours, but but all our council has done is interlineated the changes that we have suggested to our policy manual. I had previously said to John in planning for tonight, just in case, I would go through line by line, and I do not want to be tedious of a board. But are there any questions from anybody on the board or any observations from anybody on the board about the changes that are there? And I'm assuming that everybody can see all the changes. Yes. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Well, just a writing thing, and I don't know if this has been corrected, but I have another point too, but paragraph 2.76F. It should be done more frequently.
Okay, where it reads, what used to be 6 is now F, the finance administration and future planning committee of the board shall review and update the board policy manual on a regular basis, but at least no frequently than every 2 months. No more frequently.
Agree, I have that one too.
All right.
Now, which version are we looking at? Are we looking at Scott's version?
We are, and this is, this
Or the blue or the red?
Scott took our policy manual that was last updated in May. Thank you, changes in blue so that, some administrative, or excuse me, I should say more, review, changing, to, bullet points versus, 1, 2, 3, 4, A, B, C, D, because we were pretty much all over the place with how it was formatted.
So I just had a question, because I wasn't here at the last meeting, about the public participation, what has been decided, because there are no changes on the blue.
The change would be then, we still give our statement of visitors at the beginning. We will take, after we have discussion by the board, under our new business and action items, then we would have the ability to ask the public if there's any further statements, and then we would go to function.
And that was what I asked for a correction.
So after our discussion?
After our discussion, board discussion, yes.
Before the motion.
Okay, so we're not accepting Scott's recommendation. We have one statement of this year at the beginning of the meeting.
Correct.
Yeah, he said that the statement in the beginning is what you must have. But yeah, he said any other comments were on there.
Right. But he said most of districts and government agencies don't. They have a statement in the beginning for everybody. And then no further statements by the public action. So this will be in the midst of our discussion.
Once we're done discussing before we take a vote. The idea is that if we discuss something and bring up what someone might have a question of, it would eliminate the question.
But does that mean that we just accept comments from people, or we?
Yes,
accept comments.
Yeah, it's not back and forth.
And what's the time of that?
I thought we said, if we said 3 minutes.
Well, 3 minutes.
Yeah.
But the total what? Because the policy says 120 minutes.
Yeah, did we talk about 30 minutes per item?
We don't have anything. Okay, this is on page 181 of your agenda with public participation at board meetings. It's 30 minutes. Oh, wait a minute, that's the statement of position. Excuse me. Now we're under this statement. Oh, it's business unit, because this is where I didn't want to ask. Because again, we have 120 minutes of statements, and that's what should be changed to 30 minutes of statements.
Correct.
Yeah.
30 minutes per topic or 30 minutes total?
30 minutes per topic.
So if we have 5 topics, we could have 150 minutes of public statements.
Yeah. In reality, it's what the village does, and they barely get comments. I'm just, if you.
And yet we're not the board.
It's true, but that's what the community.
I'm just bringing it up.
Yeah, most of our topics are not that interesting. We can't even keep our audience.
Do you have a recommendation? Recommending something?
I've said before that I feel the board meetings are the board meetings. And that we should have, as Scott Puma has recommended and said is most common, that we should have a statement of visitors at the beginning of each meeting for anything, whether it's on the agenda or not. And then we get out of the board meeting and we have our meeting.
I agree. I hear you, Sue, where folks want to interject, but I think that causes then the process between the board to kind of changes that flow and dynamic. When you have comments coming and coming and coming, that could really affect. Then do we have a conversation again based on those comments? And that can be forever.
No, it's stated that we would not, it would just be comments. It would not be discussion.
But then you said, then we vote after the comments.
Then we set the motion and then we vote.
Yeah.
And again, my preference is that, I didn't necessarily be the only one, we were all talking about this, to be in line with what we do for the other community meetings, because when we do it differently, we get criticism, and question about whether we're doing it legally and right and everything else. And to me, it just makes more sense. I've been to several village meetings, not as many as I'd like since I'm here at the same time. But they do allow the comments, and I've never seen an issue. That doesn't mean there won't be one, but.
I feel that, again, it's good to listen if there is public comment about anything that we've been discussing. It's the statement of visitors deals only with those items that are not on our agenda.
No, when we make it for the agenda, we change the statement of visitors
To
include everything, whether it's on the agenda or not.
But I believe our discussion the other week was that if we include that, folks may be talking about something that we will either answer by our discussion on a particular agenda item or new business item. And it may help explain the thought process or where we are or information that they have been heard by discussion by the board. I'm seeing it in both ways because of the interest in the public of what's going on right now. There could be some very lengthy discussions on certain agenda items, but I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing.
Well, I think we have special opportunities to have meetings on issues that are creating a lot of public interest, which we're doing. And which was done on the golf course 4 years ago. And so anytime we want to, and I think what Scott Puma said in his initial memo that I saw, is that anytime we want to make an exception to that, if there's something that requires an exception, we're able to do it. I feel very strongly, our meetings are open to the public, but they're not public meetings. They're board meetings. And I think we lose our rhythm, we lose our board, we lose our cohesiveness as a board when we allow the public to make comments at every step of the way.
I mean, just your thought process like stops. Like it's when you have someone interjecting, so we have a conversation and then you have, and I agree, I think you can just, as the president, or, we can decide as a board at that moment that, well, this is an item that needs to be discussed. But to make it like the policy, I think.
The only problem with that is that seems capricious, that I would be sitting here, just being president at this time, of being able to say this item tonight, and I'm calling it, versus any other policy that we have set so that people can anticipate that. I mean, I would feel that it would be better to have something instituted in a policy manual to be anticipated rather than having it at a discretion of one person.
Is there anything that keeps us, we said we would review the policy manual at least no more than every 2 years as a manual. Is there anything that keeps us in the room from changing the policy? So for example, if we accepted this policy change and we put it out there and we tried to be as open and communicative and transparent as possible, and if we decided in 6 months that it wasn't working this way, is there anything that would keep us from changing that policy?
Then we bring it as.
So it's nothing set in stone. It's like, do we want to try it and see if that works?
I think trying it at this, given the level of community interest in the topics right now is challenging. I don't know if it's a great time to be trying new things like this. Perhaps at a period of calm, it might be a little bit better.
Now's the time to try it when energy and divisiveness is so high. You bring that down by saying, yes, you get your say.
Sue, I'm sorry, you used the word transparency. We are very transparent. Everything is open. All of our papers are open, all of our discussions.
We do everything that we legally say.
Okay.
Yes, I agree.
And, well, that's kind of derogatory. Okay? We do everything that's required. We conduct open meetings, and our information is open to the public. And I don't see that having discussion at the beginning of the meeting of a board meeting and then going to our board meeting is in any way being less transparent than any other method. I really don't. People can come in, they can see what's on the agenda. We've opened up the packets to them, which has been troublesome in a couple of instances, more than a couple of instances where there have been errors in the packet, and it's led to problems. But we're doing that, and people can see what's up there, and they can come in the beginning of the meeting and make a statement. And we hear their statement, we hear their concerns, and then we get on with the meeting. And the meeting has flow, and we continue it, and we focus, and we get the business done.
Well, 2 weeks ago, we discussed this, and I can live with whatever the board votes for. But when we talked about it 2 weeks ago, we were we were in agreement that this is how we wanted to move forward. So why don't we just vote on it? The only thing I would say, there was one comment I had.
The only real benefit I can see to it is that we might save time at the beginning of the meeting if we answered someone's question or, comment while we were discussing it. But at the same time, people like to hear their own voices and opinions, so they might still say it anyway, even if we spoke about it. So I don't know if it would save time or not.
Yeah, I
don't think you want to engage in commentary.
In the middle.
Question item needs to be open. Yeah. It needs to be open session for them to just comment.
Yeah, I think it's just
Yeah, for sure.
But I think a lot of, I've noticed, like, just being in the task force meetings, that it is becoming engaging, and that's not what that's not what it's about. And that's what it's happening in the task force meeting, where they're just asking questions and answering the questions from, and I don't know if people are now expecting that also. Yeah. But I think, again, I think we have those committee of wholes for discussion, right? And people can ask questions there. And then really what I've learned being on the board is the board meetings are really just to kind of get the business done, because we've already discussed it during committee of the whole, and that's the whole purpose of having a committee of the whole. And then we come to the board meetings, it's supposed to be like, oh yeah, we discussed that. And then we're just kind of going down the process. It's really more of a kind of a black and white process. When you're you're just checking the boxes at the board meetings. Really, the discussion happens at the committee of wholes.
All right, so we have.
I have a couple more other policies, if we're done talking about this one.
Okay. This is page 101 with under public participation, which doesn't need to be changed anyway because it still says 120 minutes statement. So, right, I think we're all in agreement that it should not be 120 minutes statement. But go ahead, Sue.
Well, and that can run into a problem if you're going to limit 30 minutes to topics, especially if it's a big topic, if it's a big night like tonight. So now we had 30 minutes on this and nobody had a chance to talk on anything else, but that's another word. Remote attendance. Did we agree to continue limiting remote attendance to only one meeting a year? I thought we had the conversation that was old and we didn't need to do that. So
right.
Okay.
That was our other, we discussed the fact that in order to, and I'll try to figure out this one, in order that the reason for the person being unable to attend did have to be identified. However, we did not say only one.
Yeah, right, that's on page 184. That didn't get changed to that. That's something we would, we talked about what part of that we would just remove the number altogether, that part of that sentence, so that it's not limited to any set number of meetings in a year, but it's still covered by, I think, the three reasons, that you can, participate remotely.
Right, so but we are removing, I didn't see that one.
We are, that was missed.
Okay.
So that's
Okay,
something
that's
we would
fine.
need to make, we would physically make that change to it.
And when we vote tonight, it'll.
Approve this with our changes, our updates.
Okay. The only other two things I had was more, in the minutes from June 13th, we talked about the committee meetings, and we talked that we wanted to start recording the committee meetings. But I noticed in the policy manual, I don't see any language about recording meetings at all. Should we have a policy in there that says we will record them, since we already said we're going to do it for the committee meetings also?
good point, because we do have a very extensive section about email and texting and everything else, so I think we should include some information about.
They're already recorded. They are, but there's no policy that says they're ready. And then we said we're going to change it to say record the committees, but again, where do you put that if it's not in the policy?
Which number is that?
It isn't in there. It would be policy 3.1, which I believe is the policy on board.
So we'd have to be an additional section added onto that regarding.
It seems to me that's where it would go, if we're going to be doing that on a routine basis. So we should apply that for all the meetings, since we already do it for the calendar board meeting. Unless there's some legal reason why we don't want to do that.
Where does it have the information here about public comments with emails that are sent in? That was another issue that we had as well. Or higher question.
So are you talking about audio recording or video response? That we don't do video recording at the committee meetings. We do audio. That's usually for the minutes. If somebody asks for the audio recording, we give it to them. But
We said we were going to post it, like we do the other discussion. The discussion was.
Post the recording.
Oh, I think it was discussed, but we didn't finalize it.
Well, we didn't finalize anything. It was discussion that we agreed that we were going to do that.
Oh, I didn't agree.
Okay.
No. Okay. I thought we were just discussing. I didn't, no, I didn't agree.
It's in the minutes.
Yeah, we could pull it. I didn't agree.
But it's in the minutes of the June 13th meeting.
But if we didn't decide, we were just discussing.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
It was, yes, it was agreed upon in the discussion, but it wasn't voted on.
Yeah.
Do we have a maximum? I'm going to go back for a minute. Do we have a maximum on the remote attendance?
No, I don't believe the OMA has a maximum number. It's been doing a year now. It's been over with that.
Those are license. Depending on what Zoom license you have, limits how many people can attend the Zoom. I don't think we ever did it.
Commissioners. Commissioners. Okay, so there's no maximum number. All right.
I had one more thing, it was just a request, and we don't have to approve this, but I noticed when we were on the policy meeting that we were looking at other towns for their policies, and they all had them online. Is there some reason, any way we could post our policy maybe online?
It is there.
It is? Okay, I just haven't been able to find it.
Easily, yeah. That's fine. Yes, it will be. Okay, so it looks like we'll return to staff again, one more round to kind of clarify. Okay. So. There's a significant amount of changes still that need to be made, so.
Back to the meeting.
I believe so.
When we vote on them, finally, if we ever do. This entirely, or will we, like, 'cause I feel like there's some stuff that was not necessarily agreed upon by all of us here tonight. Do we have to vote on each one of them, or how will that go? Because otherwise we're gonna end up having more and more discussions every time we do this.
I agree.
And so I don't know, like, if we can, like, pick the 3 or 4 that we were kind of, in a couple different places on and vote on those, or.
It can break
And then vote on the whole rest of it.
individual policies if there's too much.
Maybe at least a few, and then like, we can vote on the rest of it like a consent agenda, and then the rest of all those.
That's a good idea. That makes me the way you get them.
All right, and next on our agenda is the committee meeting schedule and the approval of our future meetings for the committees.
Sure. This is something we discussed briefly at that last meeting. I think one change that we did have, that page in my packet here. One change that we had, well, the times weren't set, so we recommended a rotating schedule, looking at the third week of the month, again, trying to not affect village and other meetings. So we were looking at either a Wednesday or a Thursday night of the week. And we would start with one of the standing committees, and then the following month would be the next, and then the third, and then we would, to start over. So about once per quarter, each committee would meet. And if there's no reason to meet, it would just be canceled. But this was to set, get a set schedule. We had put some times in there, but I think the discussion was that the times were going to be left up to the chair, who would, consult with the committee members.
Discussion on this.
Page 195.
Right.
So what is could be held between 6:30 or 5 PM? Is that just an example?
That's an example, and I think the discussion was that just the
committee chair.
Yeah.
And I move to approve that we set a schedule for committee meetings as discussed. However, the committee chair can determine the time. It does not have to be at 6:30 or 5 o'clock.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Greenfield.
We get to discuss this.
I thought it was an easy one.
The good old 6:30 time for all the meetings. I think when we try to have these daytime meetings, and I understand, people have things going on all different times, but we have our day jobs, we have, things going on, and it's not always easy to say, okay, I can make 8:30 or 12 o'clock, or, normally 6:30. Most of us are not working at that time. So the day jobs.
We're driving their kids lots of places at that time.
We also talked about the staff too, if there's any way we could accommodate 4:30 or something earlier in the day to make sure that their time is not spent, or their lives are not spent, I should say. So that's why it would be put to each committee chair to set a time for their honor the days where we could all do a Zoom and hopefully be in and out.
No, I hear you, Paul. I hear, I love consistency. I think when you have that, then people know, 6:30 are the park district meetings, like if you have any meeting. But then also I hear that, folks, do run their kids out, and we have other, there's a lot of, other responsibilities.
Well, we're talking here about once every few months.
Right.
So it's not like it's every week.
Right.
But it prevents a lot of us from seeing meetings of other committees as well. So it's not just a question of our own chair calling up and saying, can you do noon, can you do, 1 o'clock or whatever. But it's seeing the other meetings as well. And I don't know, I just.
Yeah.
Traditionalists, what I thought.
Well, I know you won't believe this, but I think in this case, we need to make sure that we are meeting the needs of the members, not the community when it comes to scheduling.
Could you repeat that? Is that recorded?
Yeah, it is recorded. And what I mean by that is that we'll never make everybody happy. But if we have the best attendance that we can on our committee meetings by letting the committee chair schedule it for the needs of the committee members. I think that's what it's really all about. And the staff, some of them come to every single meeting, and that's a lot of evenings.
We could try it and see what happens. Maybe chair Weber will do 6:30.
Nikki, can you please repeat that motion now that we've had a discussion on this?
Sure. So I would like to move to approve a set schedule for committee meetings. However, I feel, with the accommodation that the chair of the committee should get to choose the time of the meeting.
Second.
It was already said.
I seconded it.
Okay.
It's been said and said.
Third.
I would like to call for
Commissioner Greenfield.
I would say.
All that, you don't even just say no?
Commissioner Lane.
Yes.
Commissioner Raymore.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Beal.
Yes. Thank you. All right, now on to community comments, of which are there any written communications for community comments? As none are included in the packet. We're up from there. All right, correspondence?
I don't have any correspondence this evening.
And either, okay. So at this point of our evening, we move into executive session. Given the tradition of Commissioner Walsh being the person who reads this particular item on our agenda.
So, yeah, I'm gonna first need to make a motion to go into executive session.
Okay.
Motion and second.
All right, so may I get a motion then, please, to go into executive session? Second. For the purpose of.
Yeah, that's right. To say that I don't see it anywhere. Hold on just a minute. I don't have it memorized. Is this for, minutes?
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. For 5 ILCS 120 to 21. It should be on it. Here, this one.
A, under executive session.
So it's on the first. It's been on the.
Here, it's for the discussion.
It's on the agenda, so-
Yes. Okay. So I move we go into executive session for discussion of the meetings lawfully closed under the Open Meetings Act, whether for purposes of approving by the district of the minutes for semi-annual review of the minutes as mandated by section 2.06 per 5 ILCS 120/C21. Do I need to read B too? Or for the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of an employee pursuant to section 2C1 of the Open Meetings Act.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Sure. Commissioner Beal. No, Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane. Yes. Commissioner Raymore.
Yes.
Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Beal.
Yes. That's why.
I'll do that later, fine. And I've never participated in that. But you reviewed, but that's interesting, that's what you just released.
So now we need to
We're-
call back to order.
May I give a, do we need to move to the second? No, we have a roll call, please.
Call the meeting back to regular order from the executive session.
Okay. I'm calling the meeting back to order from the executive session. And we do need to do a roll.
Yeah.
Please. Okay.
Yeah.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Here.
Commissioner Lane. Here. Commissioner Raymore. Here. Commissioner Walsh.
So here.
Commissioner Weber.
Here.
President Beal.
Here. All right, we're back onto our regular agenda and we have resolution 2022B for the release of the closed session minutes. 199 of our.
I'll move to approve resolution 2022D, which is the release of closed session minutes.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Greenfield.
Yes.
Commissioner Lane. Yes. Commissioner Raymore. Yes. Commissioner Walsh.
Yes.
Commissioner Weber.
Yes.
President Beal.
Yes. Last item on our agenda for this evening is adjournment.
We will need a signature on, before you go, on the resolution itself, and then I think we have a couple of checks, or at least one check that needs.
Wolf already got.
Yeah. And I signed for it as well.
Okay.
And I did sign the resolution. So it was very efficient.
Before it's that.
Okay.
That's
In anticipation.
Yeah.
All right.
Move to adjourn.
Second. Voice, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. So fast. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you.